Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone, and we're heading to the tennis court now. On Sunday, Novak Djokovic beat Daniel Medvedev in straight sets 6-3, 7-6, 6-3 to win the US Open and equal Margaret Court's all-time record of 24 Grand Slam singles titles. On the women's side, the 19-year-old Coco Gauff came from a set down to beat Aryna Sabalenka 2-6, 6-3, 6-2 and become the first American teenager to win the US Open since Serena Williams back in 1999. Speaking after her maiden Grand Slam win, Gauff thanked her family for the support shown to her throughout the years, and surprisingly thanked those who didn't believe in her.
Thank you to those who are watching. And then the last couple things I want to say. Honestly, thank you to the people who didn't believe in me. I mean, like a month ago, I won a 500 title, and people said I would stop at that. 2 weeks ago, I won a 1,000 title, and people were saying that was the biggest it was going to get. So 3 weeks later, I'm here with this trophy right now. You know, I've tried my best to carry this with grace, and I've been doing my best. So honestly, to those who thought who were putting water on my fire, you're really adding gas to it. And now I'm really burning so bright right now.
Yeah, Coco, the third American teenager to win the US Open. Ricardo, it's been 4 years since she broke onto the scene. It's fitting that her first Grand Slam is the US Open. And I remember a couple of years ago, as a tennis expert, you had suggested that she probably has a bright future, but it would not happen immediately. Has it come sooner than you thought?
Well, maybe only a few months sooner than I thought, because I definitely felt, because of the way that she had played the back end of this season, that she would win a Grand Slam next year. And not just because the way that she's played at the back end of the season, but remember, she was in the French Open final last year as well. Yeah. She has shown that she is a quality player on all surfaces. I think there were some issues that she needed to work on. She has made some changes with her coaching setup, and it is clear that those changes have had a significant impact on how she's gone. She was out early at the French Open. She lost in the first round of Wimbledon as well. So this is a tremendous turnaround post-Wimbledon. As she pointed out, she won a 500, she won a 1,000, and now she's won her first Grand Slam title. I said on Friday that I expected Aryna Sabalenka to win this title. Because I think Sabalenka had been playing really well. She'd been striking the ball well. And generally, I felt that she would overpower Coco Gauff in this final. But I think Coco Gauff was able to show a lot of the improvements that she has made in previous months. I mean, one of the key things to point out, Lance, is that her father, who has essentially been the leader of her coaching unit for a long time, pretty much for her entire life, took a step back just ahead of Wimbledon, and they brought in Pereriba, who is a 35-year-old former Spanish player, only retired from the sport in 2020. He started working with her before Wimbledon, and then after Wimbledon, they also brought in Brad Gilbert, who is also a tennis analyst on most of the major coverage across the Grand Slams. And I think his impact has been quite evident, because I have a lot of respect for Brad Gilbert as a coach and for his understanding of the sport. In fact, he's written a book called Winning Ugly. And I've read that book so many times, Lance, and I think just about any tennis player, every tennis player should read that book, no matter what level you are playing, because it gives you real fabulous insight into how you go about preparing, dealing with particular situations throughout matches, throughout tournaments. And I can see his impact on Coco Gauff. I could see his impact on Coco Gauff in the build-up to the US Open and during the US Open, how composed she has been in really tough and difficult situations. You could see the confidence right throughout the tournament. You think of the first round against Laura Siegerman when she was when she was in trouble there, down a set, and she managed to come through that. When she was challenged by Caroline Wozniacki, and she was able to come through that as well. And in the final, when it seemed as if she would be overpowered by Aryna Sabalenka. A friend of mine said to me there was not an inch of the court that she did not cover in that final, and you have to give her credit to have come out on top and won that.
Yeah, because she did lose the first set 6-2, and what she did was to fight her way back into the match. She pretty much kept the points alive at all stages, and Sabalenka started to make the errors. So what Coco Gauff did to rebound from losing the first set 6-2 was showing a lot of intensity and a lot of willingness to just fight for every point. And a lot of her comeback phase in the second set weren't necessarily winners that she was hitting. She was just staying in the game and fighting her way to keep in touch. And then she took control. And there's Brad Gilbert, happy. He looked a forlorn figure in the first set when things weren't going Coco's way.
Yeah, and he's a very good tactician as well, Brad Gilbert. So I'm sure he would have been a major part of determining what the game plan was for Coco Gauff going into that final. You know that someone like a Sabalenka can implode at any point during a match. And so you want to keep the rallies going as long as possible, have her hit as many balls as possible. And it was clear that is what Coco Gauff wanted to do from the get-go. It didn't work in the first set, but as the match went on and things got tighter, Sabalenka started missing a lot more, and Coco Gauff was able to take advantage. And yeah, it's a fabulous story, Lance.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on her post-match comments about haters and, you know, sending a message to them?
Don't like it, Lance. Don't like it. And I don't like it. Generally, I don't like when athletes, especially those who the dominant sentiment is love and respect and the expectation that they are going to be great, which in my opinion is what the dominant sentiments have been about Coco Gauff.
But maybe she wasn't feeling that, because if you listen to her, she gives the impression in her comments that those weren't the dominant sentiments, that the dominant sentiments were that she wouldn't make it.
And so maybe it is that we need to get a deeper explanation of where she was feeling that sentiment from. But in my opinion, across the tennis world, as far as the fans are concerned, and even if you listen to the support that she had, yes, she's American, and this is the US Open, but it has not always been the case. And yes, times have changed, but we've seen in the past where Serena and Venus Williams have not been embraced in the same way, or in the way that you would expect American champions to be embraced. But I think Coco Gauff has always been embraced, and there has always been that expectation that she would become a Grand Slam champion. It was really just a matter of when. I think tennis experts have over time pointed out, including Brad Gilbert himself, who has now joined her team, some of the weaknesses that would have been preventing her from going all the way, like her forehand that tends to break down in big moments, which didn't break down many times, if any at all, throughout this tournament. But I don't like it because, in my opinion, the dominant sentiment has not been that Coco Gauff will not make it or cannot make it. Since this girl was 15 years old and she beat Venus Williams at Wimbledon, the expectation has been she will eventually become a Grand Slam champion. And she has at 19 years old, and that's a phenomenal achievement. And I would have preferred if she just focused and celebrated on her achievement and not go the hater route. I personally really don't like it.
Yeah, Novak, 24 Grand Slams now. More often now we are hearing these days that he's unquestionably the GOAT. We're hearing it more now than we did 2 or 3 years ago. Fabulous achievement for him.
I was trying to talk about Coco Gauff so long so that the producer would say we have to go to a break and we wouldn't get to talk about
as a Rafa Nadal fan.
And I didn't have to say that, yes, Djokovic is proving more and more that he is unquestionably the greatest player to have taken up a racket. 24th Grand Slam title, equaling Margaret Court's all-time Grand Slam record. And whereas there are questions about Margaret Court's 24, there are no questions about Novak Djokovic's 24. He has beaten the very best players to to have played this game. If Novak Djokovic was out of the equation, Rafael Nadal or Roger Federer would unquestionably be the greatest to have played the game of tennis. But because of Novak Djokovic, they are not. He has a winning record against Rafael Nadal. He has a winning record against Roger Federer. And at 36 years old, against a 27-year-old Daniel Medvedev, he's once again shown that he is just a tremendous player. He has... He is solid, he is strong mentally, as a mental force. I don't know that there is any who is better than him in that regard. Maybe you could argue equal, but definitely not better, Lance. He is amazing.
Yeah. What if a Federer fan says to you that...
Oh, and they have said it. Whatever you're going to say, they have said it.
Okay, so head-to-head Novak is superior.
Yes.
But most of the matches would have been past Federer's best.
Well, I don't know about past Federer's best. So if you're talking about most of the matches past Federer's best, when would you consider to have been Federer's best? Because then I could say, well, Nadal beat him at his best. Nadal beat him at the French Open. Nadal beat him at Wimbledon. Nadal beat him at the Australian Open. Yeah, all those victories were within peak period for Roger Federer. And even if you... So the question I would ask first up is, when did Roger pass his best? That's the question.
I think Federer's prime would have been in the middle to late part of the decade between 2000 and 2010. Why is that so funny?
Sorry.
I'm just saying, I know the Federer fans would have a lot to say, and that would be part of their argument.
Federer was still very good beyond 2010, but let's not forget that even if you take Djokovic out of that equation, Rafael Nadal was beating him before what you are suggesting his peak ended in 2010, and he was beating him at the biggest tournaments, including twice at Wimbledon, including the Australian Open final, and Nadal pretty much owned him for about 8-9 years.
The words of a Rafa Nadal fan. We go to break, can we?
Or an objective analyst.